Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, we're going to do a Act 4 and Act 5 lecture here. Just get it over with. Um, so again, I have just the PDF I found from folderdigitaltext.com or .org, excuse me, and we'll kind of just go through. So let's go ahead and get started. Act 4, Scene 1. So what's taking place here is Friar Lawrence and Paris are meeting. Paris is in Friar Lawrence's, you can call it a home, if you will, more like a chapel. And he is speaking to Friar Lawrence about his upcoming wedding. Now, Friar Lawrence is aware that Juliet is already married, right? He married her, and so he sees the complications here. And so instead of finding solutions and trying to help Paris, he instead is kind of being a little resistant. He's not necessarily too open and willing to help. Now, about this time, Juliet enters, and she is forced to communicate with Paris. Now, we know that she doesn't necessarily like Paris. She's married to Romeo. She doesn't like Paris. And she just had this fight with her father and mother because they're forcing her to marry him. She didn't want to see him. But now that they're forced in this room, she has to communicate. The reason Juliet goes to see Friar Lawrence is because she's looking for Romeo. She hasn't seen him since, and she's getting worried. Paris begins to act differently, right? He begins to act as kind of arrogant, right? He's kind of that typical masculinity kind of taken over. Juliet becomes more and more upset, and she starts to become very vague to Paris, answering him very, very short, not really answering his questions, kind of putting him off, if you will. And this leads to it leads to Juliet asking to speak with Friar Lawrence alone. And so Paris leaves when Friar Lawrence agrees. Now, Juliet, again, going back to those kind of test questions, doesn't really think things logically and all the way through. So, she pulls out a dagger, right? God joined my heart and Romeo's, thou our hands, and ere this hand by thee Romeo sealed. Right? So she's saying, this is how Romeo's fate was sealed, with this dagger right here. And there needs to be a way to fix this. And so Friar Lawrence comes up and says, you know what, I have an idea. He says, I can give you a potion that will make your body completely still. Okay? You won't breathe. People will think you were dead for 48 hours. Now, going back to that logic and reason thing, right? Look at this line here. Give me some present counsel, or behold, twixt my extremes, and me and this bloody knife shall play the umpire, arbitrating that which the commission of thy year and art could to no issue of true honor bring. All right, she's saying, help me, or give me some advice. Otherwise, I see no other way of fixing this than by taking it into my own hands, right? Playing the umpire, making my own rules. Right back to. So Friar Lawrence says, I can give you this potion. It'll make people think you were dead for 48 hours. You won't breathe. It'll slow your heart rate, yada, yada, yada. And if you take this, your parents will follow that tradition of the Capulet family and bury you in the Capulet vault. And therefore, I'll have Romeo aware of the plan so he doesn't freak out. He'll meet you there, and then you two can escape Verona. You have a new life. All is well. Okay? And so that's how scene 1 ends. And then we get into scene 2. obviously, Juliet approves of this plan, and that's how scene 1 ends. So then we get into scene 2. Now, scene 2 is pretty short. All of Act 4 is honestly pretty short here. But Juliet returns home. She is kind of giddy and happy to be... Let's see if I can get this into one page. There we go. Happy to know that she will be reunited with Romeo. And so she tries to make amends with her parents, knowing that she'll probably never see them again. And so she tells them, she tells her father she apologizes for causing that that disobedience, right? She is forgiven. And then Lord Capulet kind of breaks some news and says, you know what, prepare your clothes for the wedding. It's going to happen the next day. Okay? I'll have this not knit up for tomorrow morning. Excuse me. He then leaves and sets out to find Paris to tell him. Now, it's important to note, though, that this part right here, Lord Capulet tells the nurse, go with her. And Lady Capulet goes as well. Because she has to take this potion. And if they're there, there's an issue there, right? And so that leads us to scene 3. So Juliet knows she has to somehow get Lady Capulet and the nurse away, right? So we're in this section. We're in this section here. And Juliet essentially says, you know what, I wish to be left alone. So please let me be left alone. Let me sleep alone tonight, and I'll see you in the morning. And Lady Capulet and the nurse both say okay, and they leave. Now, the Juliet farewell line, right? It's one of the most iconic lines in all of Shakespeare, right? There's been several movies that have kind of been influenced by this. You may have heard The Farewell, Cruel World, all that, right? It stems from the Juliet farewell line. But she drinks the Friar potion, or the Friar Lawrence's potion, but she doesn't necessarily trust that it's going to work, right? What if this mixture do not work at all? Shall I be married then tomorrow morning? She says, no, says I, right? She takes out her knife and puts it down beside her, just in case. Just in case this potion does not work, I will take the matters into my own hand, right? And so she takes out that dagger and leaves it there. And so she drinks the potion after her nice little monologue and goes to sleep, as we know, but people think she is dead. Now, scene 4 and scene 5, we're kind of just going to merge into one because in some editions, it is one scene. And Folgers, they split it into 2. But so basically, morning comes, right? And Juliet has just taken that sleeping potion, as we know. And Lady Capulet and the nurse enter Juliet's rooms, right? And they find Juliet's body. And they believe she is dead, right? The nurse is the one who it goes first and finds her first, follows by Lady Capulet. And the nurse believes that she is, in fact, dead. That leaves us to this part where we start to talk about the excerpt, right? This day, we thought it was going to be great. We thought it was going to be joyous. And in fact, instead, we find our beautiful daughter dead in her bed by apparent suicide, right? They find the vial, and they think she has committed suicide. And so when Lord Capulet finds out that his daughter is in fact dead, he sends word to pretty much change the festival from a wedding to a funeral. And they arrange to have her body sent to the family's grave, to the Capulet tomb, as soon as possible. And that's how scene 4 ends. Okay? And we'll go ahead and stop it here, and we'll have a Act 5 for you too. All right? We'll see you.